Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Subnet Show. I am your host, Gabriel Cardona, and I am coming to you from San Francisco, although in the background I have the beautiful city of Venice, where I was at just a few weeks ago. If you've never been, you have to go. It's otherworldly. And we're joined today by my amazing co-host, the man with the most cats in crypto, Connor Daly. What is up, my friend?
We started recording just about 2 seconds too late because Ollie just tried to take a bite out of my face.
Ollie is a friend of the show, I think, at this point. I think it's fair to say that Ollie is the official mascot of the show because he's here every week pretty much. He likes the mic and he likes the camera.
He's the firecracker. He certainly likes attention.
So as you guys know, one of the amazing things about working at Ava Labs and this whole entire Avalanche journey has just been meeting so many amazing people who are really having a genuine impact with their work. And I say it all the time, but Ava Labs just has the highest ratio of block stars to muggles of any place that I've ever worked in my life. And so today we're very, very fortunate to have an absolute block star and somebody who has made a serious impact since joining Ava Labs. And it's a great honor to work with them. So today we have the head of product at Ava Labs, Nick Mussallem. Welcome to the Subnet Show, Nick.
Thanks for having me. Super psyched to be here. Big fan of the show.
Thank you. Did I pronounce the last name sufficient?
Yeah, Mussallem. That's right.
Awesome. Yeah, so Nick he joined us in Barcelona. So we've mentioned a couple of times that we recorded a live session of the Subnet Show while we were in Barcelona. And both Nick and Luigi, our director of DeFi, were gracious enough to join us on stage there. And we're still waiting for that recording to come through. And of course, we're going to put it live, or we're going to put it on our YouTube channel as soon as it arrives, but it hasn't yet. And so we reached out to Nick earlier this week and said, hey, would you be so kind as to join us again? Because Nick has been, he's the head of product. So of course, he's been overseeing a ton of amazing stuff. Everything that you see that comes out of Ava Labs ultimately has to pass by Nick as head of product. But there's been one product in particular, which we think is going to be a genuine game changer. It's something people ask for all the time. And our team has, taken the time to think it through and do it in a right way instead of rushing something to market. And like I said, I think it's going to be a huge milestone in the entire ecosystem and industry because everybody's been relying on this one product for a while. And now we're about to introduce something that is native to our platform, which will really, sing to, the feature set that Avalanche offers. And of course, I'm talking about the core wallet. So we're going to do a deep dive on the core wallet and kind of go over some of the features and get some, insight from Nick. But before we do that, I actually wanted to just kind of briefly talk about Nick's crypto journey and crypto vision. How long have you been at Ava Labs now, Nick?
So at Ava Labs since the end of August 2020. So sometime after you and sometime just before Connor.
Got it. Yeah. I'm May is my 2 years. So I'm like 3 or 4 weeks away from 2 years, which is pretty awesome. 2 years is an interesting time span because it's not really that long, but it's a lifetime in this industry where things move so fast and you can have an entire phase shift every year. And so 2 years is actually a long time. And when I consider all of the different milestones that we've hit since I've been on the team, going all the way back to, the Borealis testnet, and then the Cascade, I don't know if it was Cascade or Denali, but the incentivized testnet, and then we raised capital, and then we launched our mainnet. And there's been so many different milestones. It's really, really been an amazing journey. Can you give me a sense of sort of how did you find about crypto? When did you kind of get interested in crypto? And were you involved in it prior to Ava Labs, or was Ava Labs when you sort of jumped in?
Yeah, so kind of my crypto journey started kind of inadvertently. I was doing some algorithmic trading and I was working for a company that built institutional hedge fund software. And the representative, I was living in Tokyo at the time, the representative director at that time was running these complex ARB strategies on Bitcoin in like 2016. And so that was my, he was explaining to me how Bitcoin worked and how these ARB strategies were and kind of the difficulties he was facing around confirmations and transferring things around. And so that's kind of when I was first like, and that kind of led me down the journey. They also launched an OEMS, an order execution management system for crypto specifically for institutional hedge funds called Caspian. And so that opened my eyes to crypto and kind of led me further down. And so then I got past kind of the investing side of it and started to figure out, started with Bitcoin and what it was doing, and kind of the store of value narrative started to come up at that time, the digital gold narrative. And that made a lot of sense to me. And then the economics around fixed supply and everything around that's really kind of led me towards Ethereum. So then I ended up taking that and starting my own firm, founding it with 3 other partners. And that was a crypto hedge fund, crypto investment fund that had both an alpha and a structured products fund. So the alpha was just a straight up Bitcoin alpha that used some of the algorithmic trading systems that I had built for traditional markets and applied them to crypto, and they worked fairly well. And then the structured products was kind of interesting. It was designed to be, had a whole technology component around it. And it was designed to allow traditional wealth managers to offer crypto to their clients without having to do all the complexity that it took to run a crypto fund. So we built the indexes and you could customize the indexes. We have the fiat to crypto rails with connections through Silvergate at that time. We were one of the first to connect to their APIs. And then connectivity back to institutional custody. So places like BitGo, and then all the reporting and compliance factors. And so they could white label and create indices, and we would automatically rebalance those indices and do a bunch of stuff like that. So that was kind of like where I really like got my deep exposure into crypto. And then found Ava Labs. And then from there was just like, kind of like, this is the future.
And were you doing head of product there as well?
So I was the CEO at that company.
Okay.
Yep. And
in Tokyo, were you doing head of product? Have you always been a product guy? I guess that's kind of my question. And if so, how did you sort of come to resonate with that as a job path, if you will?
so I haven't always been product. I mean, product's always been a part of whatever I've done. But I started off as a front-end developer, actually. And then for advertising firms, and then
we're going to get you on React.
Management.
You better be careful. We're going to get you doing some React work soon.
Very sloppy.
I've been asking for front-end developers for months, and you've been holding out on me this whole time.
It wouldn't be pretty. It wouldn't be pretty. I was quickly pushed into a managerial role for my lack of chops. But yeah, so engineering management, and then that had a product component of it. Sure. But it was platform engineering, so it was everything non-consumer facing actually. And then and then transitioned into kind of more of an operations management role at Tora, but did a lot of product work there as well. And then of course, as the CEO of Castle, it was all product, but everything else that came around it, we were small, we were 4 people. Yeah, and so product's always been top of mind for me. And crypto products in particular, I love thinking about them. They're all kind of unique problems there.
So what does it mean to be, head of product at Ava Labs? Because there's a lot going on. There's kind of the core platform, then there's all kind of the other spin-off products that we do with like some data analytics as well as core and some other stuff that some people know about, some people don't. But I guess like what are the other components of your job? Because I know
Sure.
you're one of the busiest people at the company. Your calendar is solidly booked basically all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we sit firmly between engineering, right, and where that extremely talented team is, and then kind of where biz dev is and marketing is as well. And we do a lot of the translation layer. So the product team itself has kind of 6 core responsibilities. I'll run through them quickly, but so there's your standard product, which is like, what is the vision? Where are we going? What does the specification look like at a 0 to 1 product or feature sets on a 1+? And then what does the competitive landscape look like? And we have that traditional product management embedded in that. And then there's the design team, which is kind of taking all that work that the product team's doing and saying, okay, what does this look like? How does the user interact with it? How do we keep it consistent across the various experiences they'll have within Avalanche or any of the products that we help build or build on top of it? And then after you get into that, you get into the execution, which is like, this is where we have the good fortune of pulling together engineering teams and setting forth a path of what the product and the design team has done. And the project management team really works closely with that team to execute, right? And that's where the engineering really shines. And then at the backside of that, you have product analytics, which is just measuring like, hey, how did we do? Did we hit the markers we thought we were going to meet? Are we getting the reactions we thought we were going to get? And then funneling all of that back. And then there's two other teams that kind of sit on the back of it, which is a new one, product support, which is really facing out to the customers and also, the user base, and really trying to give also our dev relations team the chance to really focus on education and working closely with the developers and not doing so much of the support function. And that support group is also funneling back kind of the signal of what products need to be improved. So if we get a constant reinforcing loop on, hey, this is not working right, that finds its way back to the product team, which can then put that into the backlog and make sure it gets done. Then the last piece is what we call product quality engineering, which is just basically a team of software engineers and tests that are really there to build continuous integration scripts around testing the products that we're developing. So that is kind of the whole piece of what makes up the product group.
Yeah, and I can speak to the value of the product support team amongst all of those, because as he mentioned, it's really helping the squad that I lead, the developer relations squad, be less focused on sort of answering a lot of FAQ and more focused on sort of higher level goals and things we want to accomplish, such as education. And then there's also an engineering sort of an overtone to the developer relations. So of course we work directly. The way I kind of see it is there's like this spectrum where we have engineers on one side, then we have the developer relations, then we have the product support, and then we have product and biz dev. So it's kind of like if you saw a spectrum, I sit next, or the team that I run sits next to the product support team, and there is just an absolute torrent of inbound requests about FAQ. How does this work? How does this work? And so we recently, just over the past month or so, have started, and I know Nick helped drive this entire initiative, spin up a product support team. We've got two really great guys on that team, and I think they're scaling out already to kind of take some of that responsibility away from the developer relations team so that we can do more engineering centric stuff. So that's been a big success so far. There's no question about it. Those guys are killing it. I wanted to also say that to me, product is such an important role, like head of product, you've got a pretty cool job. And that's simply because, the product is like the thing, right? There's 1,000 different threads you can pull on, but when you put them all together, they form this tapestry, and the tapestry is the product, right? So you can pull a thread that's engineering, or you can pull a thread in marketing, and you can pull a thread and it's DevOps. But then when you put them all together, they become the unified experience, which is what everybody, it's the experience, right? It's the experience that everybody interfaces with directly. And I always think as sort of like the canonical master of product in my mind, of course, is Steve Jobs, right? I think of him as kind of the person who really, like I said, took all the threads together and then wound them into a tapestry. Obviously, he didn't do it alone. We all need amazing teams. But I think that's kind of a good example of somebody who was relatively technical in nature, but not an engineer from what I understand, but was able to understand at a high enough level and enough breadth and depth of understanding to be able to put together the ultimate experience, right? And that's what Apple, of course, has been known for all these years. And so I always say, like, there's so much opportunity in crypto. And I think sometimes people think that the only opportunity in crypto is engineering because it's a very engineering centric sort of ecosystem, but there's so much more than engineering. If you go look at our careers page and all the different roles we're hiring for, probably a third of them are engineering, and there's so many other ones. And product is a good one. And so if you're the kind of person who wants to get into this and maybe you're not engineering, you're not straight up an engineer, check out something like product or something like design, something that allows you to sort of think about the user experience and to approach solving the problem from that perspective. So, we want to create a new wallet, or we want to create, a suite of analytics tools or whatever it is, and then kind of start fleshing out the user experience, flesh out exactly how you on-ramp somebody, the funnel, what exactly are the different payoffs, the key performance indicators and metrics that you want to hit. And then you put all these things together and you kind of have this, rough approximation of a product, at which point then, you kind of go build it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I think, I do think that, product, when you look at it, is really only as good as the entire team, especially the engineering team. They really do work hand in hand. And I think Ava Labs is unique in the fact that they do place product in the engineering group. So they really are one team and just an extension of each other. I thought that was a unique decision. And, a lot of the engineers are making product decisions. I mean, they're closest to the ground on it. So as they go through and they'll come back and say, hey, we thought about some corner case that you might have never thought about because you're not just so deep into the weeds, like into the code level. And it's always like, oh yeah, we totally missed that. And we have to address that, that state condition or something that we couldn't see happening. So there really is this like very unique and deep collaboration between both teams where they really are extensions of each other.
It's kind of funny, like when you're actually building software, systems like this, they take on a life of their own, and there's some common characteristics. They always get more complex. They all, the work always pushes you to add more features, get more universal, do more everything. And some of that is just kind of like regular bloat that everybody faces. But when you are kind of really deep in something, there are like kind of like nuances that the work tells you that like this is the right thing to do. And it's important, I think, to have that balance of people who are super hands-on, who have that connection with this is the way the work is telling us to do this, and then also having people who can take a step back and have some perspective of saying like, yeah, I know you want to do that, but that's a bad idea. And like the market that we're looking at like really wants us to go this way. And I think having the synergy of those two perspectives is super valuable to making sure that overall you're all moving in the same direction, because it's so easy at the same time also to just put your head down and work on something. There's two failure modes. Yeah, you can put your head down and work on something and just become out of touch with reality, or you could kind of just ask for things that are impossible and not have any intuition for what you can actually accomplish. And so you need both of those to be firing all cylinders to be delivering the absolute best product that you can.
Totally.
Yeah, and the last time we saw Nick, like I mentioned, was in Barcelona. And so I know that's kind of old news by now, but I haven't really got to sync with you since then. So just, do you have any high-level takeaways from there, other than that it was an absolutely amazing experience and was great to meet everybody in person?
I mean, so that's the greatest part, but it's also great to be able to like really sit down with people who are building face to face and understand what they're trying to do, and understand kind of what barriers they're facing. See all kind of the innovation that was happening. It really is such a vibrant community, and it's I feel like there's very little maximalism in the Avalanche community, actually. So when you talk to people, it's, I'm always interested in talking about, hey, what do you think about this chain, or what this chains are doing? And what do you think about this product that was launched? And, people have used them and will give very open feedback and really understand like, hey, why are you choosing to build on Avalanche opposed to build on something? Or why do you choose to use Avalanche, and what aspects of it do you like or don't like? And so everybody there was into Avalanche. It wasn't like one of those things where I had to like go through and find somebody who had like similar interests. It was just like everybody had similar interests. And besides the fact that it was just such a well planned and executed event, that I think everybody had a really good time.
Yeah, amazing time. It was the best journey of my life, that whole 3 weeks, traveling across Europe with my mom and having her get to see what we've been building and all the positive feedback from people. It was truly a high, it was a high water mark for my personal life. I mean, that was an absolutely amazing experience for myself. And so I think there's, what I was going to say is there's actually a bunch more events that are on the horizon. There's 2 that are coming up over the next month that I know about, that of course I'm not going to label them right now, but just a little bit of alpha. There's a lot of really cool in-person events that are coming up. There's one that's coming, like I said, 2 that I'm personally working on in the next month, and I'm sure there's others that I'm not aware of. And so I think one of the big things that is going to be going down in the Avalanche ecosystem is the number of in-person events that are going to be happening going forward. I've been in crypto for a long time, and there's not a lot of meet space things that happen, and sometimes there are, but then you'll go a long time where there's not. And I think that's going to be different with Avalanche and Ava Labs, where I think we're going to be having a lot of in-person events going forward. So if you didn't get to go to Lisbon, you didn't get to go to Barcelona, fear not, there's going to be some amazing thing that's coming to a city near you soon. So I'm sure we'll be seeing all you guys in person relatively soon. Okay,
And I mean,
so
this is the thing of just, Avalanche launched at the height of COVID. And so just, we couldn't have anything. So it's not like we used to have things and then it stopped happening. We just never had them to begin with. So these are, really the first times that our community is actually getting to meet each other in person. And, we weren't able to make it out to ETH Amsterdam or Dev Connect or whatever that conference is right now. I think our whole company is kind of collectively still exhausted from Barcelona, but there's going to be so much happening in the next few months, especially if any of you are a fan of Formula E. There's going to be a lot of tie-in events with Formula E, so definitely keep an eye on that race calendar.
yeah, the amazing Andretti squad with the beautiful Avalanche car. It just came off so beautiful. I saw it again in Lisbon, and it's just such a nice machine. When you look at it, you're just like, wow, that got pulled off so well. Okay, great. So I think, as I mentioned, we brought on Nick to talk about the new Core wallet. So Core, we're branding it as the new operating system for Web3 users. And I think Nick is the appropriate person to talk about it, not only because he's the head of product, of course, and he's been help driving this, but I believe that this was his original vision when he came on board. So I remember connecting with Nick the very first week he was on the team, and him pitching, I don't know if it was called Core at the time, but it was something very similar, like a Web3 OS.
That was Ava OS.
Ava OS, yeah, that's right. So it's cool to see. So I guess my question to you is this sort of like a direct lineage from that? Have you been stayed true to the vision this whole time and finally got it to come to fruition?
Totally. I mean, I remember the initial image that I put together in that kind of pitch deck was it was a car. It was kind of like the Tesla frame without any of the body around it. So you could just see the battery and the drivetrain and stuff. And it's kind of like, we've built this amazing drivetrain with this great new technology, with this amazing consensus algorithm that's driving everything. But we need to create this like gorgeous, accessible experience around it to really highlight what it's capable of and to really make it usable for more than just super deep tech people. And Ava OS is all about accessibility. It's all about smoothing the friction of what it takes to be crypto savvy or engage in, DeFi or culture or whatever it be, but really take that experience and really like create an OS experience about it. So you can load applications into your OS, but you kind of always understand how the fundamentals are working, how you load things, how you install things, how you uninstall things. And so the whole goal was to give the user a consistent feel, because the Web3 ecosystem, as apps are built right now, they are a bit fragmented, and some of it has to do with just the nature of crypto, the fact that you have mnemonics and the fact that every single site has a different look and feel, and they call things differently. And so you constantly have to go through this relearning process. And so the goal is really like, how do we just simplify it a bit so that the common user can get started, and then kind of work their way into the complexities rather than being embedded in the complexities at the very beginning. And that's really where, Core is born out of, is this idea of like, let's really make crypto accessible to everybody and really leverage this, beautiful technology that has been created by our very talented teams and make sure it gets out to as many people as possible.
I think the thing that I'm most excited about for Core is that, every wallet is kind of, they have like some like goal. Like for example, Coinbase Wallet's real goal is to integrate you with Coinbase to make it like super easy to like onboard you. That's their competitive advantage that they can do, is they can get you from the exchange to a wallet to use and adapt very quickly. I think Core's competitive advantage is going to be that it's actually designed for Avalanche and not necessarily just going to be a generic EVM compatible wallet that is going to be kind of the jack of all chains, master of none. And I think we are going to have some, fairly, wide-ranging capability to work with other chains, but it's really, MetaMask takes so long to refresh to actually show you when your Avalanche transaction completes. It's much slower than it actually is. And just having a wallet that shows your transaction when it's actually confirmed and not after like another like 5 or 10 second delay. I mean, even that alone is huge. And I think if you were actually designing an app with the first class Avalanche applications in mind, is just going to do so much for the ecosystem to really help users key in on what the most popular apps are, what the most popular NFT collections are, and how to just bring it all together in one roof. And I think everyone is kind of like, there's a lot of talk about the multi-chain thesis right now of like, that's where the world is going. So I think a lot of the builders in the space are building very broad tools that are applicable to so many environments. Like, it's really refreshing to see hyper specific tools that are just really keyed in on just one ecosystem. And I don't think we've seen this yet. So that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I sort of alluded to at the beginning, is that this really represents a huge milestone, or really a paradigm shift, because we've been living in the era of MetaMask. And there are other wallets, but I think, MetaMask is sort of unavoidable. When you enter the Web3 ecosystem, at some point in your flow, you're going to be getting MetaMask. And so, as Connor mentioned, we've made it work for Avalanche, and it's been, it's got us where we are today, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. But even like he just said, we have sub-second immutable irreversible finality, but yet you're still waiting 5 to 7 seconds or something for MetaMask to ultimately let you know that your transaction is settled. And just something that small, just that single example, is going to be a huge leap forward. But also having it be non-custodial, having it have support for subnets, having it be specifically architected for the Avalanche ecosystem is going to be a huge deal. And I think we're obviously going to be moving away from the era of MetaMask, and we're going to be moving into the era of core. And that's a really, really big deal. It's a milestone. It's a paradigm shift. And so there are kind of 3 different areas that are on the immediate product strategy for 2022. We wanted to get Nick to touch on them as the head of product. So we have scale, accessibility, and then builder utilities. And maybe we can drill down a bit on each of those, and we'll toss the mic to you, Nick, and then we can kind of, approach it however you want to. But let's start with scale.
Okay. So, I mean, the whole scale, it's interesting, as you guys brought up so many pieces there for core. One of it is just, let's make it native, right? You don't want to have to import smart contracts in order to see the asset that you're trying to see. That's a no-brainer. Let's show how fast the underlying protocol is. And so let's make it, let's have WebSockets that are listening, so the minute the transaction's done, you're ready to go. And then, it's funny because you're like, the year or year and a half since the original idea to where it came out, well, why all of a sudden did it finally get built? And the answer is subnets, right? So subnets require this whole satellite of utilities in order for them to work properly. And one of the core satellites is wallet experience. So every subnet needs to be supported by a wallet. They also need to be supported by an explorer. They also need to have API endpoints that are going to support them uniquely. They also need to have interoperability, whether it be subnet to subnet, subnet to mainnet, subnet to other chain, right? So all of these utilities that support the underlying subnet thesis needed to be built. And so we couldn't rely on anybody else to really do and give subnets the justice that we thought it needed, quite honestly, conceptually, not many wallet providers were interested in supporting it from the beginning, which brought it to life. And I'm very thankful for that, because it gave us the opportunity to build core. But as we jump into kind of the 3 core tenets going into 2022, number one is scale. So it's vertical scale, and vertical scale comes in the form of all the Apricot releases, and those will continue to make the XPC chains faster, optimized, more secure. And then it comes in horizontal scale, and all that horizontal scaling comes in the form of subnets. And so as the initial subnets are being built, you're starting to see kind of the initial use cases come forward with DeFi Kingdom and Cribata Swimmers. But you're also seeing something that's super interesting, which is the concept that, hey, there's not going to be a single blockchain. There's going to be many blockchains, and there's not going to be one blockchain fits everybody. There's going to be blockchains need to be very sector specific. And I know that there's something that Connor's working on right now that he tweeted about recently was precompiles. And precompiles to me are, this goes way beyond my technical prowess, but the fact that you can build something natively in any language you want and embed that into the blockchain at a level that is more gas efficient and can affect things like throughput and can be specific for gaming, or the KYC implementation that he put out today, which is going to be useful for regulated entities to start using blockchain. Like, that stuff's really exciting and opens a whole different layer to what's possible here.
Can you
So I
touch
don't
on
know.
that a bit, Connor? Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. Can you touch
No,
on
that's
that,
what I
the
want.
KYC, Connor?
Yeah. So I had a Twitter thread go out about this on Friday, as you're listening to this, that talked about my first PR on my new role. And so basically, I think I explained this a little bit last week, but I'll recap it. So precompiles are a way to add custom functionality to an EVM instance. So when you create your subnet, you can just roll an exact duplicate of the C chain, or you can just make some basic changes. And we have our Subnet EVM, which is kind of a utility to launch your own EVM fork. And so you can mess with the gas parameters, and you can also add these custom functions called precompiles. And precompiles are basically a way to do expensive operations, not within the Ethereum virtual machine, but actually on your native hardware. And so it actually lets you kind of do a shortcut to make computations a lot more efficient. So for example, in vanilla Ethereum or vanilla EVM, when you want to compute a cryptographic hash, computing those is actually an incredibly computationally expensive operation. It involves lots of operations. It has to be implemented very carefully. And if you were to do that, line by line in a Solidity smart contract, it would cost you tons of gas. But instead, what they do is they do a precompile. So a lot of computers will actually have like a SHA-256 function actually built into their chipset. So they can actually compute it super efficiently. And you can turn the gas cost down because it's not actually taking up that many resources anymore. So for these precompiles, you can actually take just whatever function you want and put them in the EVM and just make them available at an address. So, and you can create like a dummy smart contract to call that, so it looks like you're just querying another smart contract, but it's actually doing a precompile under the hood. So this week I released a new precompile called the transaction allow list, which essentially lets you create a subnet where only nodes that are whitelisted can participate in submitting transactions. Anyone can still read the chain, but you have to be on the allow list to be able to send a transaction. And so some use cases for this, the most popular one I think is going to be KYC subnet, where you have a set of admins who control who is added or who's removed from the whitelist, and those end up being some kind of KYC provider. And so if you'd like to join the subnet, you go to the KYC provider, you give them your information, they verify you, and then once they're ready to add you, they will add you to the allow list and you're good to go. And as long as you're interacting from that address, you can participate in the whole network. Some of the other use cases I shouted out where maybe you wanted to roll a production subnet in a beta mode where you wanted to only allow a certain subset of users or just kind of cap the number of people that could use your app at the same time. You could just onboard users one at a time using the allow list. And with any of these precompiles, you can actually, if you're willing to fork the network, you can add or remove them at a later time. So you could eventually remove your whitelist as well. And kind of the last thing I tossed out was an idea of doing kind of a privately writable, publicly readable database. So if you just wanted to distribute some information, you could actually, for example, like let's say you wanted to record the weather every day, and for some kind of Oracle contract, you could have this database of all your weather data be an EVM instance, because there's some advantages to doing that because it's a well-known data format. There's so many tools and interoperability layers that can read your stuff and pipe it into other apps that it actually might make sense to do that, even though it might not be the most computationally efficient way to store that data. And so, weather.com and AccuWeather could be teaming up to both have access to the subnet, then they publish the data, and then anyone can read that weather data. So that's kind of a cool little feature. It's not something that, we have a firm use case for right now, but we're just kind of putting it out there so that the community that wants to take this and run with this has opportunities to build some cool stuff, because we just want to be putting tools in the hands of people who know how to use them. So yeah, no mainnet release planned with it anytime soon, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's huge because it just shows that Connor's new job is already bearing fruit. So, that quick, he's been on the job maybe 2 weeks or something. He's already releasing pre-compiles. And so, now building on this, I'm very excited to see what he releases in the future. This is very cool. I think that was a good role for you to land in. And then there is another point that we wanted to raise under scale, and that is subnets as a service. So the way I had sort of been visualizing this, and I'll be interested to know Nick's input on this, is sort of like one of the amazing things that the cloud did is that it abstracted away needing to set up and then maintain your own hardware. So ultimately it got as efficient as being able to log into a DigitalOcean or an Amazon website and go to a forum and just say, I want this operating system, I want these hardware specs, I want it in this particular location of the world, I wanted to use this as SSH keys and all this stuff, and then you could just spin up your own virtualized hardware. And so something about subnets is that ultimately we can see them going in a similar direction. I don't know if it will ultimately be that same user experience, although there is a huge opportunity for that. But with regards to scale, I wanted to bring up the idea of subnets as a service and get Nick's thoughts on that.
So I think you nailed it. That's exactly what we're driving towards. And so if you think about it, the goal is to take all of the underlying infrastructure and effort it takes to deploy and effectively run a blockchain and really abstract as much of that away as possible, if that's what the building team wants, which is what we're finding is typically the case. And so when you get into kind of these managed blockchain efforts and mix those with subnets, what you kind of get is these push button deployments. And we kind of visualize it in a GUI as a menu where you can say, hey, I want this type of subnet. And then you could even set like tokenomic parameters. You could get into a lot of the stuff that Connor was talking about and say, hey, yeah, I do need AML KYC, or I need some kind of like connectivity to Unreal as a middleware for my game, or I need, there's these use cases go on and on, right? But so that you have a menu, I need verifiable randomness as part of my subnet, right? And so you really start to create a menu and then cater the subnet to what the builder wants to do. And the whole goal is get them out to market as quickly as possible. So they're focusing on their business idea, right? This compelling problem that they're solving, rather than how do I manage state growth on this system, right? And so these are the goals around the subnets as a service.
I mean, that's really the thing right now is there's probably only 100 highly qualified blockchain engineers that can work on the core platform that have had some experience doing so and that aren't starting from scratch. And there are far more people than that want to launch their own subnet and that want to kind of have their own L1. And so we want to allow people to experiment as much as possible and push the envelope when they can. But for the majority of the users, we want to have like an easy path. We want to have, a follow these instructions and you're going to do okay. And then for the people that want to absolutely, rewrite everything from scratch, do something super custom that no one has seen before, we want to encourage them too and give them the capability. So it's kind of, we want the balance of having everything ultimately being configurable and being modifiable so that the true experts can tune things to their liking, but also just have that approachability so that you don't have to be the world's leading expert to be successful, because that's not a sustainable business model. We need lots of people to be successful. We want everyone that sets out to build on Avalanche to be able to accomplish what they want to build. And we just have to be able to cater to all those different tiers of users.
And I can also see part of this subnet as a service feature being able to incentivize validators, because of course we've talked about in the past, how do you get over that hump of I launched a subnet, but I don't have enough validators where I feel that it's secure, with the idea being more is better. And so potentially in this workflow, you can either, maybe there's validators that offer themselves as a service under certain prerequisites or something. Again, I'm not entirely sure how it's going to look fleshed out. But I imagine that would be another huge value add, is being able to, not only spin up your own custom VM, not only be able to talk about you need verifiable randomness and all these other things, but I also need validators, and I'm willing to incentivize them in this particular way. And that falls into this bucket. And there's people who've already, agreed to do it under those circumstances, that kind of thing.
Totally. That is definitely on the roadmap. We call that validator as a service, which is basically
Nice.
just here are the validators, and it judges them and scores them. And then you can choose the ones you want. And then there's basically like an auction format that allows buyer and seller to meet without there having to be any centralized brokering happening in the middle of it. And so that way, you don't have to have your own 5 validators and stake 2,000 of Vox for each of them. You can go out and use somebody else who's already acting as a validator and who's proven their value in that capacity.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I have to say, I don't like talking bad about other projects, but there's one thing that I really dislike about some of the Chainlink marketplace stuff is if you want to find an Oracle to provide your data, yeah, you literally have to like kind of go through a marketplace and just kind of like look at people and like find them. And it's really like kind of hard to navigate, and it's like reputation based for like, who's trustworthy or not. But I feel like it's very hard to do that in a way that's not gameable. So that's something that always irks me a little bit, and to hear that is actually really reassuring for me.
Okay, wonderful. Another one of the 3 points we had with regards to the immediate product strategy for 2022 is accessibility. What did you mean by accessibility?
Sure. So accessibility really goes back into core, which is just we need to make Avalanche, its ecosystem, and all of the other chains that it connects with and supports accessible to everybody. And how do we do that? Well, we rethink the whole experience. And so, I'm not going to go into the entire feature set of core because it's pretty deep, but I will go into some of the differentiating factors, and we've talked on some of them. Native support for everything that's in the ecosystem itself. The fast time to finality will show up. Another unique one, and I know you've had Michael, and I think you've had Connor Larry as well, but the integration of the bridging technologies into the various core properties. So core will present itself as a browser extension. It'll be a mobile app, and then we'll have a web experience as well. The extension itself will support bridging. So all of the Ethereum bridging will be supported into it, and you'll be able to use the wallet and use the application across multiple networks. It'll also support bridging of BTC, which is something that the team's been working super hard on for a while. We're right at the end there, and very excited to see this come to market. So you'll be able to bridge your BTC, your native BTC. It'll be supported into core. Then you'll be able to bridge that over into the Avalanche ecosystem, and your store value just got a little bit more valuable because you can then borrow and lend and do everything that you would want to do in DeFi against what was your native Bitcoin. So
and as we mentioned when Michael was here, there's been $46 billion, if I remember the crazy number of assets which have bridged over from Ethereum into the Avalanche ecosystem since it went live in, I don't remember, September, or I don't remember, was it July or September? I don't remember, but
240 have transferred. It's crazy.
240 billion. Or assets.
Sorry, it's 240,000 transactions. Right?
Yeah. 240,000 and then 46 billion, which is just a staggering number. Yes. So that's very exciting. And then the reason I even throw that out there is because in the context of Bitcoin, right? So if $46 billion worth of Ethereum has transferred over, and Ethereum already has DeFi, so there's already people who can, get yield and partake in that flavor of investment on the Ethereum side, but still they saw value in bridging over. Imagine how much more with Bitcoin that doesn't have DeFi as a native, paradigm on its ecosystem. I suspect that $46 billion number is going to go much, much higher. And then the third point on the immediate product strategy was builder utilities. What did you mean by builder utilities?
Sure. So this goes back to how do we make it easy for the developers and the developing projects to launch onto Avalanche. So this gets into subnets as a service, validators as a service, but it also gets into the nuances that we talked about. Like, what if you want to accept credit cards? Well, we don't want you to have to go through the whole process of finding the credit card provider, doing the integration. You can use Ava Pay, and you can basically choose this menu item that'll come as a module that's embedded into your subnet, and then you're up and running with accepting credit cards. There's been some amazing work done by both of you around NFT marketplaces and minting and signing and key control and everything that's very complex around that, and extracting that away and putting those modules to use for the project so that they're able to have controls that they might not otherwise have, or they're very complex to build. Again, to get them up to market to have these capabilities. We talked about verifiable randomness. We talked about, for gaming companies, having integrations with middlewares, all of these aspects that are specific to sectors and specific to their use case, trying to support as much of that as possible to allow them to have the idea, put together the necessary pieces, launch it out to market, and get to market quickly so that they can start to realize their vision.
Got it. And so this, like, I absolutely love Core. I'm already in love with this product. And one of the reasons is, and it's placed in one of the strengths of Avalanche and Ava Labs. So for years, I have been saying that the next huge startup is going to emerge from the blockchain. And that's not like I have some magic ball or something. I think anybody who's half awake would be aware that, yeah, of course, the blockchain is such a huge platform that eventually some huge startup is surely going to emerge from this space. And the analogy I've been using, and it's a very tired cliche, is, the next Google is going to emerge from the blockchain space. And what I mean by that is, in the same way that Microsoft recognized that the desktop was a platform and they built an empire around the desktop, and in the same way that Facebook or Twitter recognized that social was a platform, in the same way that Google represented web, or recognized that the web was a platform, that there was going to be a team eventually that came along that appreciated that, wow, the blockchain has the potential to be as transformative as the web. And they were ultimately going to sort of take stewardship over it and then build a suite of products around it, and then ultimately build an empire on top of it. And I've been waiting for that company to emerge for years. I've had several that I thought might be it. And I really, really do believe that Ava Labs has the potential to be that company. And I mean, we're humans, we could blow it. I'm not trying to jinx it. I understand that nothing is a given, and there's a lot of work to be done. But one of the strengths of the Avalanche ecosystem is that we have Ava Labs. And so sometimes I hear people who will pejoratively speak on Ava Labs has too much sway in the Avalanche ecosystem. And of course, ultimately, we intend to enable governance and, to enable, the community to have more of a say in sort of the direction that things are going. But one of the strengths of the Avalanche ecosystem is the stewardship role that Ava Labs takes. And so being able to create something like Core, which builds upon all of these satellite services that Nick mentioned, from bridging and all of these other services that are all being stewarded by and articulated and driven by Ava Labs, is one of our strengths. And it's the reason that Avalanche has just been killing it over the past 18 months. And you see these other ecosystems like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they don't quite have the same driving force that we do in the Avalanche ecosystem. And so Core to me is a really, really important product. Core, I think, is a good name for it, because it is going to be at the core of so many different satellite services, and it's going to drive things. So I just want to give you massive respect and props, dude. Good job on staying true to the vision. You saw that vision when you showed up, and man, you have got it close to the finish line. That's pretty awesome, dude. Congratulations.
Oh yeah. I mean, 100% team effort. Everybody has been giving, adding to this vision, making it so much better than it was originally. And, I think, like, you bring up an interesting point that I've thought about quite a bit, which is, it is a difficult path, because you want to be decentralized, you want to support the decentralized nature of everything, but you want to be able to make decisions quickly and move forward on things. And I think that's kind of, I read an article that was very interesting about kind of how traditional businesses work versus how DAOs are working. And traditional businesses are just kind of very top down, where everybody marches, and DAOs are a bit more like a government structure, where you have to kind of get buy-in, and there has to be a lot of handshaking in order to get things kind of passed through. And we're kind of falling somewhere in the middle there, right? But I think the the overarching goal, at least why I'm here, and like kind of what brings me to crypto and my crypto vision is just, it's really kind of just spreading out the value so that not all value is accruing to 1 to 20 different companies, right? So like you have ride sharing and you get like Uber and you get Lyft, and there's just 2 of them, right? There's nothing to keep anybody who needs a ride from connecting to anybody that has a car. Like, why should it have to go through one company? And can't we really spread the ability to participate in all these opportunities out more broadly, right? I mean, I think there's the vision of decentralization and kind of this nirvana state, and then there's kind of where we are today, and I think there's somewhere in between that we're going to have to walk through to get there, which really look like DAOs, which aren't completely open and decentralized, but are much more decentralized today, and that the quality of distribution on whatever it is, the value that's being accrued is much broader than it is in today's kind of vertical corporate world. And I think that's the promise of crypto to me, is kind of level that playing field out for a greater amount of participants.
Sure, that's the promise of Web3, right? Taking everything that Web2 was and kind of turning it on its head. And so, yeah, I resonate with that vision. A couple more. I know we're very close. Actually, I think we're beyond the time now, so I think we can start to wrap it up. There were a couple more things really quickly I'll touch on because they're very important. So there have been multiple security audits. I don't know what the state of them is right now. I don't know if we're being reviewed and making changes on them, but there's not just one, but there's actually been multiple security audits, which of course we find, incredibly important in all of our major products. Every single thing that I've worked on at the company has had security audits. And as I mentioned, there's been multiple here. And, we take security very, very seriously. And so that's great to hear. I don't know if you have any thoughts, if you want to touch on that in any way.
Yeah, for sure. So there's 3 audits that are going on around core and the bridging capabilities. One of them's completed. 2 of them are in remediation right now, which is, kind of what's driving our timelines to some extent. And then we just do rolling audits, right? It's not like we build, the engineering team's always building, but we're just saying, okay, every major release or every quarter, we're just going to audit, especially places where there is extremely high value like the bridge. And so we know that the audit is not, especially third-party audits are not the end all be all. We all know that from the incidents that happened, but we also have our internal auditing team and our internal security teams, and just our engineers as a whole are so talented, and the expertise is so deep that I think everybody contributes to trying to make sure that everything that comes out of and is released on Avalanche is secure.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it, Connor.
I was just thinking that we really have accumulated a lot of like super high risk. We operated L1. We're working on a wallet now. There's all this bridge stuff. We basically have what are the highest value assets that you could have in your possession that are difficult to secure, and we're basically working on all of them right now. There's definitely a few DeFi contracts that are very valuable, especially like some of the like large AMM pools and things like that. Ava lending pools that are just absolutely ridiculous in size. So it's a challenge. It's a fun challenge, but it is certainly a challenge, and something that we just think about all the time. And I came from the cybersecurity world before this, and defense is so much harder than offense, because with defense you have to be perfect all the time. With offense, you only need to be right once. And so and we know that our reputations are on the line for this. And this is something that, if we build core and everybody that uses it loses their money, that's a really bad outcome for everybody. You don't get a second shot. So, it is absolutely something that we take 1000% seriously.
Sure, it's all about risk and reward. And then with great power comes great responsibility. It's like the biggest cliche of all time, but it's quite true, especially when you're a super user. It's like when you first get your super user keys, that's the very first thing you learn when you learn the sudo command. It's like, think before you type, respect the privacy of others, and with great power comes great responsibility. And each one of those is like a very, very deep tenet that you could really unpack and meditate on forever. And so one last, I'm just going to briefly read out the features across mobile wallet and browser extension, because I know we have to wrap it up, but really quickly. So core will be ledger enabled. compatible with industry-leading hardware wallets. So obviously hardware wallets are absolutely critical. If you have a non-trivial amount of crypto, you should invest in a hardware wallet. It will definitely change your life. And it's similar to two-factor auth or using a password manager. It's just one of those workflow things that you can add that will just make a huge, huge difference in your life and will protect you, not 100%, but will protect you in many, many different scenarios. So Core will be ledger enabled. It will have a portfolio and collectibles pages. So dashboards for seeing all fungible and non-fungible tokens in a unified display without having to add token addresses or switch networks. That's what Nick touched upon briefly there. Like when you get MetaMask and you've got to kind of add contract addresses. Swap, so you'll be able to swap between hundreds of tokens directly from the wallet, powered by Paraswap. So this is obviously huge. You'll be able to buy AVAX directly from the wallet, powered by MoonPay. It will have an address book, create contacts to save frequently used addresses. So this is, again, it's just about the user experience, making it super smooth, being able to save addresses that you commonly use. And then lastly, an account switcher. So you'll be able to create and manage multiple addresses using the same recovery phrase. So this is also a huge deal. And so, yeah, again, I'm singing the praises of Core. I'm already a huge, huge fan, and I just see so much promise here. So, yeah, I just want to express gratitude to you, Nick. Thank you for everything you've done, man. You're just such a block star, and it's really a pleasure to work with you. You're an extremely humble dude, and you're awesome. And yeah, I just have a lot of respect for you, man. So thank you so much for giving us your time.
Likewise, I'm very grateful to work with both of you. I know we've done a lot of projects together, like you're saying, just 2 years, and just the amount of stuff that we've been able to do together. And I'm excited for what the future holds. And I really appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Okay, well, what's your Twitter? So if people want to follow you.
Sure, it's @_nmoose, which is NM00SE.
Excellent. All right, everybody go out and follow Nick for that alpha. And Connor, any last minute thoughts? Twitter handle?
Yeah, I just crossed 10,000 followers today, and I am pretty stoked about it, man. It's pretty cool. I just remember a year ago trying to get serious about Twitter and actually try, and I started at like around 100 followers, I think. And, I just used to think that 1,000 was an absolutely insurmountable barrier, but, life has gotten very weird and a lot of cool stuff has happened. So, just shout out to all of our listeners who have supported us and, have been really great about liking and following and sharing, because it does make a huge difference. And because of you, I personally have been able to have so many opportunities that I would never have dreamed of before. So thank you so much for making that all happen. But if you're not following me yet, you absolutely should. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DAS_Connor, DAS_CONNOR.
Excellent. I got both guys on notifications, so I get them right away.
Yes. And if you haven't subscribed, if you haven't subscribed to this, smash the like button, smash buttons everywhere. All the buttons shall be smashed. Okay, yeah. So I'm a CG Cardona on Twitter, CGCARDONA. And just thank you to everybody. If you made it this far, you're an absolute champion. Thank you to all of the Subnet hardcores. We just get so much love on Twitter every week and so many people liking and resharing. It really is refreshing and very rewarding. So thank you. We have a bunch of amazing guests lined up. And so we'll be back next week, same bat channel, same bat time. And so as always, from Snowflake to Avalanche and through consensus to the stars. Thank you, everybody. Peace.